Okay, so head back north to the United States once again then for Confidence. What is that about, Scott?
Yes, well, my knowledge, memory, and expectations of confidence heading into this episode were best characterised by the numeral 0, although a quick glance at IMDb and seeing James Foley directing, he of Glengarry Glen Ross fame, mentioned earlier, certainly raised some hope, balanced only by Doug Young's shared writing credit on The Cloverfield Paradox. Which way is this one going to fall?
I did not look that up.
Explains it explains a lot to maybe give away. So anyway, Edward Burns' Jake Vigg and his gang of ne'er-do-wells have just finished conning some mark out of a stack of cash, which will soon have lasting consequences when they find out that the mark was working for a local crime lord, just as in this thing, of course. But here it's Dustin Hoffman's Winston the King. Jake is encouraged to proactively make amends after one of his gang is found dead and meets with King to come to an arrangement. They plan to con a large sum of money from one of King's rivals, Robert Forster's Morgan Price, who happens to own a bank. King agrees, but insists that his goon, Frankie G's Lupus, strings along with his usual gang of Paul Giamatti's Gordo and Brian Van Holt's Miles, also recruiting Rachel Weisz's Lily to help plan to befriend and bamboozle Bank VP Leon Ashby, played by the dependable John Carroll Lynch. Getting in the way of things are the gang's semi-tame bribed cops, played by Louise Guzman and Donald Logue, who are being blackmailed into, well, doing their jobs by Andy Garcia's special agent Gunther Bhutan, who's been on the trail of Vigg for many years and sees this as a prime opportunity to take him down. And look, I suppose that's all the setup you need, and by this point in the episode, I don't think you'll be too surprised to find out that things are not quite what they seem, and perhaps you can't trust anyone involved in any aspect of this film, or most of today's films for that matter, but this one in particular has a highly unreliable narrator, which is perhaps the closest this film came to really displeasing me. The rest of it is glossy and slick enough that any emotion refuses to adhere to it, be that positive or negative. It's pacey enough that it's never boring, it's a very easy, fairly enjoyable watch, but it's not a film that's going to make any kind of impact, apart from one day in the future wondering why it didn't show up on Ben Affleck's IMDb page, before remembering that it did in fact star the discount Poundland Ben Affleck, Edward Burns. If I was in a worse mood, I would perhaps be meaner about a film that gathers this amount of talent together without giving them anything particularly remarkable to do, but I suppose that also means no one's particularly bad. I can't think of a lot else to say about Confidence other than to reiterate that it's a reasonably enjoyable watch that I've already largely forgotten. So it's a good piece of disposable entertainment, which makes it an easy recommendation that you rent rather than buy, if that's still a thing. Yeah, and if it shows up on your Netflix feed or whatever, and you're in the market for this kind of thing, it is a perfectly disposable and enjoyable piece of entertainment, but I cannot imagine it staying in your memory more than a day or so, so yeah, it is what it is, and it's fine.
I've had the DVD of this for a very long time, and the cellophane was actually off, which makes me think I did watch it at some point. But in fact, I have quite strong memories of having watched it, in that, like, I knew the name and the stars and stuff and the year, and like, was that so logically for me? So I damn certain I watched it, but when I sat down to watch this time, I'm like, I don't remember this. Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with pretty much anything you say, Scott. It's solid.
Yeah.
It's a solid, entertaining film. Enjoyed my time with it. It's only just over an hour and a half. It's the right sort of length for this. It bombs on a nice clip. The biggest, probably the biggest problem I have, other than like not enough Paul Giamatti, but when is there ever enough Paul Giamatti?
Yes.
The answer is, of course, never, apart from maybe Sideways, which is just the right amount of Paul Giamatti. And that's an excellent film. It's, you mentioned the unreliable narrator, and it's like, it's got a narrator. Why does it have a narrator? It doesn't need a narrator.
Yes.
The next film we're coming to also has a narrator, but while it's perhaps also unnecessary, it doesn't bother as much there. Although this film, as with The Brothers Bloom, doesn't commit the sin of so many films with narrations. It's why, as one of the major reasons I dislike them, is that at least it's consistent.
Yeah.
This film may be a bit less, but there's a bit of narration at the start, and it carries on regularly, if infrequently, during the film. Whereas like films that just like drop in a bit of narration, like maybe twice in the film, why did you bother? It's just, you've not made your film very well. It's like, at least if it's set up as part of the way you're telling the story. I'm a lot happier with it.
Yeah.
Although, again, in this film, it's mostly disposable. Why it's set up the way it is, with like him on his knees on the ground telling his story to this guy at the start and then telling it in flashback, it adds nothing. There's no reason for that set up to be there. So like, it would work just as well, possibly better without it. Although I don't think it particularly harms it. That's my biggest issue with the film.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is, I'm going to repeat myself. It's solid. I like pretty much everybody that's in it. Whatever happened to Edward Burns? Saving Private Ryan in this, and I can't remember another damn thing he was in. Yeah, I think that's it. There's like a remarkable similarity between him and Ben Affleck. So you make a joke, but it's also, not far off the mark. And this is a film that, so what I mentioned earlier, it very much borrows stuff from The Sting.
Oh yeah,
Particularly the Andy Garcia character, which I suspect, again, just in general knowing the genre, I think I could see coming what was happening there. But because it's so similar to The Sting, that's definitely not a surprise. And there are a few other bits in this film in particular that have that sort of the Sting sort of feel to it. But yeah, it's fun. Yes, it's fairly disposable, but it's quite like when it's got a good cast. It's squandered considerably less than Criminal, as I mentioned a little while ago. Yeah, it's just a film that I don't quite know how to stop talking about to move on to the next one.
It's hard to recommend you go out of your way to watch it, but if it stumbles up on your path and you can't get out of the way of it, then it's not going to be an enjoyable time while it rolls over you. It's probably the glossiest of the films we're speaking about today. It's the slickest, maybe. It's by no means the best, but it's probably the kind of most digestible.
Yeah,
there's a place for that, and like you say, not damning it with faint praise. It is perfectly fine, but it is. Yeah. It's not going to be. It's not. You're not going to remember it in a week. That sort of thing. You know what I mean?
No, it's not special. It's a good pop song of a film.
Yeah.
You enjoy your time with it. It sort of satisfies on a kind of fairly basic level. It's produced and polished, but you're probably not going to get a lot of depth out of it and not going to want to return to it a lot.
Yeah.
That works quite well as an analogy, if that's how I feel. Really solid, entertaining. It's much more enjoyable than Il Bidoni, but, there's not really interesting characters in the way that film has.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything. But yeah, you could certainly do worse than watch it.